We're live, right? How are we all this evening? It's been quite a while, so let's have a catch up. Let's have a nice long chat, including a sort of interactive chat at the end about the road to rejoin. I mean, lots of people want to campaign, they want to fight to rejoin. Um, Nothing has been overtly on a large scale launched on this yet. So how should we approach it? I mean, we're now coming up to December, but I'm planning for 2021 and beyond. What's that going to look like? Evening, everyone. I see the messages popping up on the side. Good evening. Hi, Dr. Mike. Hi. Yeah. How are you all? I want to chat this evening about the big sort of rejoin question. How do we tackle it? Because the situation is at the moment, we've got Brexit negotiations underway, and either we get a thin deal, or we get no deal, or we get a sneaky extension because Boris Johnson and his crew can't face up to either of those two options and the disruption that either of them would bring right in would bring in very short order. So it's going to be one of those three, but you and I can't influence any of that at this stage. You know, they're locked in to their influences, and also with the Labour Party as well. There's very little you or I can do at the moment about whether the Labour Party are going to vote to support any deal, or whether they're going to abstain or vote against, or what have you. It'll be between supporting a deal and abstaining, but whatever. What is at this stage, and we'll deal with what comes. But going forward, how do we campaign to rejoin, or how do we campaign to at least build a lot closer with Europe? And on this count, you know, I'm feeling quite chipper, and a lot of people in the campaigning environment that I know, pro-Europeans, are also feeling more chipper. And the reason is this: if you look at the YouGov polling, that question of was Brexit right or wrong, that gap is opening up. It was just a couple of weeks back, or 3 weeks back, 51% saying it was wrong to vote to leave, and 38% saying it was right. The biggest gap ever. There was been one since, which is 50% and 39%. And that's matched, you know, the highest high that it was before. At the same time, we had a poll out today in the Mail on Sunday, no less, asking people, you know, if you were to vote now on the question, how would you vote? And it was 54% Remain to 46% Leave. And this is where we are. And this is after 4.5 years of Tory government preaching Brexit. If you remember this time last year, there was 100 million spent on that Get Brexit Done campaign. I remember when that was announced, you know, my heart just sank, because in the referendum itself, the official Leave campaign was allowed to spend 7 million, and the official Remain campaign was allowed to spend 7 million. Then you had all of your other sundry campaigns, including Scientists for EU and other things we were running. And, you know, that made it, what was it, 13 million for Leave and 19 million for Remain. But then when the Vote Leave crew got their hands on the actual mechanisms of government and said, actually, we're going to throw 100 million at it, well, I thought they were just going to be able to turn everything around through sheer advertising. But after, you know, even with the landslide general election, where, you know, that question was out of our hands and it was, you know, a party political question, even after all of that and all of this year of, you know, then we actually did Brexit is behind us, doesn't that provide a feel-good factor? Still, after all of that, the public are dead resistant to Brexit. You can't get a majority of the public that will support it, and that's been the way for years now, but it's opening up. So there's that factor, but there's also the colossal factor of Trump leaving and Joe Biden coming in. And again, as I've said in another video before, the plan at the beginning of this year that this government had would be that they would move quickly on to the local elections in the spring and sort of trounce Labour there before they were ready, then go into big spending over the summer and big spending into autumn, have pretty much a no-deal Brexit, but styled out by just putting in all that expense, all that expenditure on everything that Boris Johnson is trying to talk about now, if there's big green plans, what have you. But the coronavirus pandemic changed everything. Suddenly they were starved. They've become starved of money, but also they've had woeful mismanagement throughout the year, but also the public are totally sick of disruption. And they're not expecting now disruption with Brexit, but that's what they're going to get, whatever happens. And the public no longer have stomach for the big bravado buccaneering Brexit where you take it on the chin, you eat grass and all the rest. We've just had a year of misery. People want to build out of this. They don't want any more. And with Trump gone, and the fact that this government didn't do a deal with Donald Trump before the US elections, which is what their plan had been during the spring, they didn't land that. And now they've got Joe Biden in place, who is responsible, level-headed, looking to rebuild the transatlantic relationship based upon Brussels and Berlin and Paris. And also is saying that the UK is going to get no trade deal unless we do a proper deal with the EU, which guarantees the security and stability and peace and so forth and so on. It means that all the wildest preferences and fantasies of the Brexiteers aren't there. And I'm seeing, across social media and across the media at large, very little of the Brexiteers being, in full throat about what they're going to do. That their sort of vim and spirit seems to be significantly gone to me. They don't want to talk about it anymore. They kind of want to minimize the pain. So I think that there's really fertile ground here for a rejoin campaign. The denouement is upon us. There is going to be pain and suffering. Even the Telegraph is reporting on the limitations that Brits are going to have, those who own second properties abroad, that they're going to be limited at the amount of time they can spend in them. And that is going to sink in, the free movement stuff, the small orders from abroad that's going to have to go through customs and get charges, the exports as well, and problems that we're going to have there, as well as the imports, all the small bureaucracies, the red tape for our small businesses and for our citizens, trying to get a driving license to drive anywhere in the country. All of that is going to start adding up and really annoying people. And this is where the rejoin campaign, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, I want rejoin. I want to be campaigning for rejoin. That is my mission now. I said it soon as Boris Johnson won. I said, F this, who's up for rejoin? That's where we want to start building back. But what we've seen from this year is that you don't need to overtly campaign, in your face. We are Remainers, we want rejoin, all the rest. The polls have shifted in our favour over this last year without Labour, championing Remain or championing anything Europe. They've been quite useless on that front, or without any of our campaigns being overtly out there asking for, Remain or rejoin or, extensions or all that kind of stuff. What we've done is we've largely campaigned at it through other routes. So firstly, the political capital of the government, we attacked heavily through their handling of the coronavirus crisis, mainly through, March for Change and demanding the public inquiry there, then setting up the all-party parliamentary group inquiry, then launching the COVID secure plan off the back of that, doing polling about what the public thinks about the government handling and getting that out there. building the bylines network, Yorkshire bylines, West Country bylines, West England bylines, North East bylines, Sussex bylines, in order to convert grassroots pro-EU campaigners into having their own news channels, and then helping out Save British Farming. And that's been one area where our campaign against the US trade deal then adopted Save British Farming, because to actually get the farming community on board to do tractor demonstrations around the country at the same time, where you have 80% to 90% of people wanting to maintain British European food standards against US imports. That has all been something that we've done more effectively this year than we ever did with the People's Vote campaign, and really reach under to those who had previously been on the other side, and start building those communities resisting where the Brexiteer government has been trying to take us. So that's been important. And I think going forward with the Rejoin campaign, what we want to be doing is essentially picking off all those easy wins. What is going to happen on January the 1st, unless there's an extension, in which case they're delaying it, is people are going to lose things. They're going to lose rights. They're going to lose easy access to imports and exports. When things are taken away from you, then you've got something very visceral and very obvious to go and try and fight for, to claw back. So whether it's free movement, whether it's cross-border healthcare, whether it's the Erasmus program or our collaborations on science, whether it's approvals on medicine, or mutual recognitions of qualifications, all of these things can be campaigned on independently as a sort of building blocks process back to rebuilding our role with the EU. And it may not even be that we go and rejoin the EU. It may be that the EU has changed since, or it has that system of rings that Macron was talking about. I mean, I can quite see Scotland getting independence and then going and joining EFTA. That would be a very natural choice for Scotland, because Scotland would fit very neatly alongside Switzerland and Norway and Liechtenstein. I mean, size-wise and ambition-wise, it sits right in that mix. So it's very hard, what the solution will be to sort of rebolt back in. But there's tons of options that you can work and put together. So I think what we need to be doing is essentially just setting up that long-term process to be building our communities, and with all the different angles on campaigning, clearly from a disrupted start point, to then just slowly sort of rebuilding with Europe, campaign by campaign by campaign, and reminding people of the mess that Brexit has been, the public opinions against it, and so forth and so on. So it's quite a straightforward process. I don't think it's of advantage to us to be screaming Rejoin from the rooftops and evoking the same kind of vibes that we had with the People's Vote campaign. I think what we need to do is amplify, obviously, what a lot of the Guardian, the Independent, the Financial Times will cover, but also critically reaching into and community building in the rural communities, in the market towns, in the red wall. We need to be more clever about seeing what are the various communities in our country, and tapping into and building into those in order to sort of build our narratives. But anyway, that's what I think. I want to chat with you guys and know what you think. But I'll say one thing first. I put in this link, here's our new Patreon link. So this is because we started just now, just before I launched this video, a new Patreon channel. What Patreon is basically, if you're a patron, then you make a monthly subscription, and then you're then supporting what we're doing on a monthly basis. And then it also means that you can get access to exclusive content. So there's chat there that I can engage with you in on that page. You know, there can be polling there, but most importantly, I want to do more live streams. So I've been campaigning now on this since 2015 and built Scientists for EU, and then Healthier In, which became NHS Against Brexit, NHS for People's Vote. And then we were one of the founding campaigns of the People's Vote campaign, and then I built the Social Media Intelligence Unit, and then I got a lot of funding for growing up all the grassroots on Facebook. Then we had March for Change in 2019, but then in 2020, we repurposed it to do the coronavirus inquiry, to support the Bylines Network, to support Save British Farming. But the thing that people keep coming back to and talking to me about is the videos and how they value videos like this, where I provide a sort of, you know, updated breakdown of what's going on in politics or science policy. And then oftentimes able to sort of interact and chat with people. And I used to do more of these kind of like long videos where I also chat with people, but this is what I want to do more of now. I think that there is an increasing demand for video content and interactive content. And I want to be providing more and more of this sort of chatting. So I will continue to post on Scientists for EU and NHS for People's Vote, and occasionally March for Change in my own channels on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. But I also want to develop that little chat environment where I can, you know, read down these live comments that I've got on these screens, chat to you guys, answer some questions, and then we start building that kind of community as well. And I think that Sunday evening is the time where it's easiest for me to do that and just kick back and have, you know, a whiskey or, you know, cup of coffee and just chat with all of you all and give you those updates in terms of what's going on in campaigning, what's going on in policy, you know, what I know. You can ask me questions. And so if you would like to support that, to ensure that, you know, we've got that backbone of regular monthly funding so that we can be building up on that through the years to come, then that would be sweet. That would be dead helpful. There are others building on this at the moment, like Double Down News or Byline TV. I would encourage you to go and have a look at both of those. But I think that's the kind of community that we need to be building up, those kind of actors. So please, when this video ends or when you jump off it, please do become one of my first patrons, or become one of Scientists for EU, because it's the Scientists for EU channel. Become Scientists for EU, one of the first patrons, and set that up, and that would be dead helpful. Right, now that's that. Let's have some chat time, because I'm doing this on StreamYard, and that means it's going out to various channels at the same time. But all of the comments as I talk collate in this sort of like panel down the side. So I'm gonna pick out a few of these. Dario says, count me in for rejoining. Very good. Donald Trump was never going to give the UK a preferential trade deal anyway. It was just another one of his, of course I'll marry you in the morning promises. Yeah, maybe. I think that's an interesting point. I think if he had won a second term, then I think that it's very likely that he would have actually wanted to go for a trade deal. Because he, like the UK Brexiteers, wanted that dynamic of the US and the UK against the EU. Donald Trump saw the EU as a threat. It's a threat on standards because it has a different model to the US, precautionary principle, higher standards, and basically in terms of global trade, you've got something of a standards war. The three big trading entities are the US, the EU and China, but it's been the US and the EU that have really been the standard setters, that the US at a lower level, the EU at a higher level. And essentially Donald Trump didn't like the EU demands on trade and the way of doing things. So if the UK could break away from that, diminishing the EU and pile in with the US, that just gives the US a whole load more leverage on its own standards and its own way of doing things globally. So it was actually in his interest to do that. It just didn't happen in time for the Brexiteers and for Donald Trump during the first term, and because of all the standard disagreements. But I think that if it got a second term, it was a real threat. And so I am dead glad that that has gone past, because that would have put us in a really bad place. Okay, another comment. 90 out of 100 days can be spent at second homes in EU. Yeah, so this is something that has been throughout the press today, including the Telegraph. The fact that because we've lost our freedom of movement and our birthrights to actually have that access and set of rights to treat the rest of Europe, like a second home, so long as we can support ourselves elsewhere in Europe, we're entitled to have homes and visit them around the year, but not anymore. Now it's going to be limited to 3 months in every 6-month period. And so that's going to be very disruptive for some people. Yeah. Let's see some other comments here. Paul says, it's ironic, but the Rejoin campaign can use almost all the same arguments that Brexiters used to use. Take back control, get rid of red tape, let's get a great global nation again. Yeah, I totally agree. For me, the fundamental thing is freedom. And there's a notion, freedom it's a simple concept to understand, whether you're shackled and limited or whether you've got more freedoms. And the whole notion that was sold during the referendum was that the EU keeps us restricted. If we leave the EU, then we get more freedoms. The EU kind of sits on top of the UK like this. And so it's only natural that if we manage to get to the side, we will float up like the Leave EU balloon sailing off into the distance. Whereas actually, the EU broke down barriers and built a platform upon which we sit, which is why when we come to the edge, we don't go up, we go down. And we're going to notice that it is those freedoms to trade across Europe, freedoms to have access to goods from Europe and goods around the world that were coming into the single market, and our freedoms to travel around Europe and bring our pets with us on pet passports and with our driving licenses as and when we please. That's going to go, and that's going to irritate. So I think freedom with that red tape aspect definitely is something to campaign hard on. And for me, that notion that the EU was a platform for us, certainly true for science, because the EU was a platform that had this global network, and by sitting in it, our top institutions and scientists could command prime positions, leadership positions on truly global multinational projects, and that's what we're losing. Norway adjusting the single market in a very rich country. Yeah, so I think, as I was saying before, particularly with Scotland, there are countries like Norway and Switzerland that are not in the EU, but they're in the single market, i.e. they swallow EU rules and they're happy to do so. They're a small country, so if they were in the EU, they could nudge a few issues, but they're just one of many round a table, and they've just gone with the model of, listen, if 27 or 28 other countries all come to conclusions about what's a good way to support small businesses or advance standards here or there, hey, they're probably good rules. So yeah, we'll just subscribe to that, and we don't need to do the thinking on that, because challenges for us in Switzerland or challenges for us in Norway on many of these issues are going to be the same as in Denmark and in France and Germany and Sweden, what have you. So yeah, I think particularly with Scotland, that's why there's the very easy and logical EFTA route as well, should they decide to go their own way. Kieran, will you push this petition, Mike? It's to extend transition period for 1 year and then a referendum with the option to rejoin. Okay, Kieran, I've pushed loads of your petitions before, and when I've got time, I will. I think petitions to extend it this year, they're not going to be listened to. I think we're probably better planning how we're actually going to tackle the fallout of whatever this government does. Can I ask who is this chap that's speaking, please? Right, my name is Mike Goldsworthy. I did my PhD in behavior genetics, which is genetics and psychology. And then I went on to do animal behavior, then medical informatics, then health policy, and then science policy. And it was from that health policy and science policy that I then set up Scientists for EU and Healthier In, which was, the health science equivalent, an NHS-based equivalent of the Remain campaign for that community. Right, let's scroll to more recent comments. Oh Christ, sorry, I've missed loads because I jumped back to ask a few. So let's have a look at the more recent ones that have been coming in. A tiny minority of privileged toffs are making a fucking, language, Simon, are making a fortune out of this. It's criminal. Yeah, definitely. And that goes not only for the coronavirus crisis, it also goes for Brexit. The both of them help make the rich richer and the poor poorer. As a general rule, whenever there's big disruptions that happen to an economy, then it's the people at the bottom that suffer and take the hit, that aren't adaptable because they don't have the liquidity and the networks and the options. They're the ones that get ground in the gears, where it's those that have wealth at the top that say, well, why don't you give me that contract and I'll help you out? Or I want to bet against the pound because I know from my mates that there's probably going to be a crash out. So with all these big seismic shifts around, yes, it is those at the top that take the money from it. And especially when it's a fast-paced environment, then there's real worry and real concern that we're not going to get justice from this. And I think it's absolutely vital that we do have public inquiry, like a full judge-led public inquiry into the government's handling of the coronavirus crisis with a particular view on where finances have gone. I think that's absolutely vital that happens. Yeah, that's key. Because this corrupt crony culture, this is really, really wrecking our country at pace. No country in the EU loses sovereignty. Yeah, that's a tricky one, because what do you mean by sovereignty? And this is quite something that sounds nice and simple. Sovereignty. If you're sovereign, you have control, and it's like your gold coins, hoarded to yourself. But with this gold coin analogy, if you think about, your sovereignty is your power, and think of it like gold coins. You can either hoard it up on your own island, and you completely and utterly control the affairs on that island, North Korea style. You don't care about the outside world, but then you've got complete and utter sovereignty over your island. Or alternatively, you could take some of those gold coins and put them in NATO, in which case you lose a bit of sovereignty because you've signed up to this agreement that if one of the others in the group gets attacked, then you have to go in and help out. But at the same time, you've invested in the fact that if you get attacked, then a whole group of others are going to help you out. Similarly, you can spend, a coin of sovereignty in the EU, in which case you say, well, we don't have exclusive control over the rules of working and residents in our country, but by the same token, we have just bought extra sovereignty for each and every one of our citizens to have more freedom and power over their lives on the entire continent. So with sovereignty, if you think about it in terms of where you want to invest, I think that's the right way to approach it. See, for example, sovereignty over fish is meaningless. Like if the fish breed and spawn in your territory and then go and migrate elsewhere, are they your fish because they're British born and other people shouldn't be fishing them, so you try and fish them all in your area? But what about if they're born and spawn in French waters and then come to you? Is it fair that the French then overfish there when you're used to having fish just passing through and it's been plentiful and bountiful before? So there are certain circumstances where you may want to have competence and control over your own national affairs, but then there are going to be other ones where your best model is actually a shared model, because you give up a little bit, but you get massive wins for your citizens or for your businesses or for your civil society, setting standards and being able to petition many other countries, not just your own. So I think sovereignty is actually a really interesting concept that sadly, in this whole debate over all of these years, I've seen very little mature and in-depth discussion of what it actually means, and I've seen like no nuance in all of that, and I think that's really sad. And in fact, early on, when David Cameron announced there was going to be a referendum, I thought, thank God, finally we're going to actually go and discuss all of these issues. About time, because the media haven't. And then it was a total, shit show in terms of quality of information, bluntly. And I think that it was a real shame that David Cameron just rushed that referendum through. He actually, had promised it before the end of 2017, I think. So it could have been a much longer process, whereby the first step was setting out rules of engagement, and also with agreements and structures to have better quality conversation. But it didn't turn out that way, did it? Anyway, there's always the future. There's always time to learn and revisit these arguments, but it's a slow process. Right, what else have we got in here? How long do you think Boris will be around for? Ooh, interesting question, Adam. I think that there is a fair chance that he will be gone in the spring. I think that looked a lot more likely just about a month ago, when clearly the whole dynamics within Number 10 were really getting to him, and there was a lot of battling going on. He was a lot more tired then. He was grumbling about, his salary, because he was used to being flush with cash, but then also he was constantly trying to shirk responsibilities. I mean, I think that his brand is becoming tarnished fairly quickly with the public. I think Brexit will add to that. I think once Brexit is done, he'll probably want to get out of there, because then he will have done his bit. He will sort of have secured his legacy. And I think what he probably wants to do is go off and do the speaking circuit and be entertaining to posh old boys and get a whole load of money from just being entertaining with very little responsibility. So I think you're seeing within the Conservative Party a lot of people already prepping Rishi Sunak to, inherit from him. Yes, he's young, but he's also got high popularity ratings. There are people like Lord Ashcroft, which have written a book about the rise of Rishi Sunak, and they're promoting that as a sort of like puff piece in order to sort of pitch roll for him coming in. So I think there is a fair bet that he might decide, by springtime, that his sort of had enough. If it's not looking good in the polls, and if Bojo's mojo isn't there, and his own party are angry with him about the economic damage of coronavirus. They won't care about the economic damage of Brexit particularly, but they will care about the economic damage of coronavirus and the fact that we've had a higher death count than most countries, a bigger economic impact than most countries, and also at the same time spent more per GDP on trying to fix it than most countries. That's a triple whammy of real incompetence. And if the backbenchers continue to be unhappy with Boris Johnson's approach, then I think they may decide to pivot to Rishi, in the springtime. That's my bet. Oh God, comments coming in so thick and fast. I need to be faster on these, and then we're past midnight as well. Right, I'll do a few more, and then I think we'll wrap up. Let's go to some of the most recent ones. Okay, this is taking a lot of scrolling. For us to rejoin, it would require another referendum, so not stale at all. Or do you think we can just ask to rejoin without voting on it? To be honest, the rhetoric of the Remain campaign is stale. Yeah, so that's what I agree with, and that's what I was trying to say before. I don't think that demanding sort of rejoin and a referendum to rejoin and demanding that the Labour Party put it in their manifesto for 2024, I don't think that's particularly realistic, and I don't think that that's the right way to do it, because it is, like you say, a bit stale. So I think that what we want to do is try and grab the wins along the way that we can, which is more collaboration where there's easy collaborations on science and health and universities, which is going to be a main thing where people agree. Citizen rights, cross-border citizen rights, and the e-hit card, and sort of being able to buy into that. I think all of those kind of things, and then setting up a new forum of dialogue between the UK and the EU, and maybe even a tripartite one between the US, the UK and the EU, because basically, let's face it, with us leaving the EU, we don't have all of those MPs or all of those senior diplomats or our heads of state regularly engaging in the European Parliament, the European Council, the European Commission structures, as we have been before. So we're out of the loop, we're out of the room. And so I think there's going to need to be some kind of rebuilding, and I think it's through those steps, if you can achieve just a few of those and the direction of travel is clear. And I mean, we could go back via EFTA, for example. I mean, that could be a manifesto pledge further down the line. But I think that the sort of like basically, why do we want to be in the EU in the first place? Collaboration, teamwork, common standards, having each other's back, working together, being in the same room on decision making, magnifying each other. Okay, so all of that you can start to do and rebuild without having to dive straight into the EU if we've just buggered up our relationship a bit. So I think starting with those fundamental principles of why do we care about this? Why are we spending our time on this? It's not just the economics, it's not just the individual rights, it's the whole spirit of the teamwork thing. So anything we can rebuild, saying, Brexit, what a, waste of time and money and delusion that was, put that in the bin and start to rebuild, then that's all we should be really looking to do at the moment. And then, see where that takes us, basically. The fundamental thing is to nail the spirit of it, to nail the identity of being British European, to nail the future path of this country, seeing itself as being magnified around the world for good purposes through the platform of our own continent, where we chime with them on the same values, as Germany and Sweden and Denmark and the full gamut of our neighbourhood. Right. I see Wales for United Kingdom is here. Yeah, I've noted some of your comments. Welcome to the chat. Lovely to have you here. And I think that's really, really good for conversation. So what are you saying now? Simon, that's partly why it was... Oh, I don't know. I can't get the reference to what you're saying there. Right. Oh, Adam Brady, can you talk about the patron and minimum costs? £1 as a minimum might help those who want to contribute, but are currently having a hard time in the economy of COVID Brexit. Yeah, listen, if you can't afford to support or chip in, then just don't. Don't worry about it. I mean, there's lots of people who are, economically under tough conditions recently. I mean, in the campaigning environment as well, lots of charities, when coronavirus came along, just had their money sucked right out because a lot of donors, small and large, long-standing and new, wanted to go and put lots of funds in coronavirus rescue activities. So across the whole campaigning and charities environment, that's been a real hard time for a lot of people. But with Patreon, I think the minimum amount is £3 a month, I think is the standard. I don't know. I'll go and have a look and have a fiddle with that. But I think in this community, and I mentioned before Double Down News and Byline TV, I think more of us should be building up channels that are supported that way. I mean, with Yorkshire Bylines as well, and the Bylines network, we encourage people to make monthly donations there to support the build up of that. So I think one of the most important things we can do at the moment is just, that community building. And so that's the Facebook pages, the Twitter channels, the YouTube channels, the local newspapers that we're building, all of that, and all of us getting involved with writing for those, with campaigning for the local groups, but then also chipping in to those channels that are doing analysis and providing content. So yeah, if you can, I think the minimum is £3 a month, right? And then shall I do one or but go and check out the page, please, when I wind this up in a sec. Right, I will do one more. I'll do two more. Wales for United Kingdom. Thanks for acknowledging, Mike. Which country do you think will leave the EU next? Don't know. I don't think any of them are looking likely to leave at the moment. I think that genuinely was more of a concern back in 2016 after the Brexit vote. I think that really rattled the European Union, and I also think the migration crisis of 2015 did as well as the Euro crisis and what that meant for the Greek crisis. I think at that time, when you were seeing the right flare up in Austria and Marine Le Pen in France, I think at that time it was looking dicey. I mean, there's still, Hungary and issues there, but I don't think any of those Eastern European countries actually look like they're leaving. The actual support for the EU and the popularity of the EU has actually increased over the last few years. I thought at the beginning of the coronavirus crisis, the EU response was sluggish at the beginning, and Russia was certainly quick on that, sending in tanks and medical supplies to Italy early on. But then I think that a lot of European countries then really got their act together, both at the bilateral level, where you saw, the German planes flying in to help out the Italians, and then also the French as well. And when you had Austrians sending masks to, France and Italy, and you saw a lot of bilateral helping out, but then also on the European level, there was a lot of, on the EU level, sorry, there was a lot of coming together for bulk purchasing of vaccines, and loosening of state aid funds so that everyone could just, pile in, and also actually within the science program as well, and related to it, building a lot of new funds to support that. So I was worried at the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic that there would be falling out over that, and I'm surprised how cohesive the EU has been over the last sort of 6 months or so. So I don't think any country is going to leave the EU soon, bluntly. Right. I'm going to have to keep calm this week because I know I'm going to get seriously worked up around the misinformation of any deal, that on top of real hardship, which has hit because of COVID. Yeah, I'll finish on that one because I agree, and I think that's a good finishing message. It's easy to get wound up by the way the government has been spinning things in the news. It is not open, and it's not honest, and it's not transparent. It's all spin, 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 desperate spin. And the irony is you have characters like Michael Gove, who gave a few months back a grand speech about the importance of accountability in the civil service, the importance of open data, because once you make the workings of government and the civil service available to everyone, then you can have individuals and you can have campaigns and think tanks all come in and dissect and feedback. Yeah, but then he goes and sets up his Orwellian unit, which limits freedom of information requests selectively, depending on whether they like the journalists or not. And also, there has been, over the past few years, real restrictions of the freedom of information that they give out. So this government is dead frustrating in terms of their complete charlatanry and dishonesty, and it is very easy to get wound up about it. I think what we just have to do is recognize what you can change and what you can't change, and just when it stresses you out, sort of like let it go. You will do what you can when you can, but the most important thing is building your friends and your family, and supporting the campaigns that you like to support, and then just that good, healthy local stuff. You can only do as much as you can do. Do not let it wind you up. It's no good putting your health on the line for the sake of this government. If you need to switch off the radio or the TV, do that. Take care of yourselves. And all of this is a marathon, not a sprint. So that's what you have to bear in mind always. And yeah, I'll wind it up there. See you all later. Please go visit that link, and I'll see you again shortly.